What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast is coming back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious, along with Just Total Package, and Craig, the British Bulldog, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Today's topic, the legacy of Bret Hart. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. And you can also look to your left for several other video options. And please give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019. If you dare.
Don't start now. Don't start now. Why?
All right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they would. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. So why are we doing Bret? What's going on? What happened?
Bret he passed away.
He's dead?
Yeah.
He passed away. I knew. I
passed
set
away.
you up perfectly for that. That's beautiful.
No, I've been wanting to do this for a while, and Craig turned me on to, I'm going to say it wrong. It's chat, what is it, Craig?
GPT.
I'm so fucking stupid. I'm 40 years old. So I've been using that, and I really enjoy it, because it really does a lot of the work for me. No, this is Bret Hart. In a weird way, Bret's been polarizing a lot of his career. I was thinking about that, and that word is a very specific word that I use, because some people will be like, what? No, there's nothing polarizing about Bret, but he was. As growing up, we grew up in the rockin' 80s, and as that started to wind down, Bret was part of that. You know, we're going to get to it. He was a tag team in the rockin' 80s, and then he became Intercontinental Champion as the Federation was kind of dippity-doo-dah in the early 90s, where the Hogans and the Savages and the Pipers were getting old, and people didn't want the same formula.
Yeah, what a great time.
Yeah, people didn't want that same formula anymore, so 91, 92 got really soft. 93, the bottom fell out, and there we had Bret. And the Federation was turning from this big monster factory and having these 300-pound monsters because Vince wanted people in airports to turn heads. That's what it was. Bret was a normal-sized guy, 6 feet tall, 225 pounds. I'm sure they lied about his wrestling weight. He was probably 220, 225. But he was an amazing wrestler. And he did, looking back, he ushered in the fact that we started accepting good wrestling. It's so weird to say that out loud, that in America, we didn't accept good wrestling. We accepted characters and giants and things like that. That was kind of like what Vince pitched to us in the late 80s and early 90s. How fucking great was Bret? I don't think there's ever a time that we ever look back on anything that he does and we don't go, God damn that guy. That was fucking wonderful. And that's why I just finally, through the advent of AI and just me finally not being lazy, I did a legacy of Bret.
There you go. I guess we'll jump into the early life and the legacy of the family. Bret Hart was born into wrestling royalty on July 2nd, 1957 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. His father, the legendary Stu Hart, wasn't just a promoter. He was a stretcher.
Yeah, but
he ran the infamous
vacuum the pool. God damn it.
That molded some of the toughest wrestlers the world has ever seen.
Help your mother with the dishes.
A direct quote from Bret. Growing up with 11 siblings, many of whom were just part of the business, Bret was surrounded by wrestling his entire life. That early exposure and hard-nosed training led the foundation for that iconic style. That wasn't a Bret quote. I'm just totally lying to you. Stampede Wrestling in 78, all the way to 84. It's a good amount of time that he, Bret he actually wrestled in his father's promotion of Stampede. From the start, his mat-based technical style stood out. He wasn't flashy. He was smooth. Every hold, every move had a purpose. Super true. Even later on. He held titles like the British Commonwealth Mid-Heavyweight Championship and formed rivalries with the names of Dynamite Kid and Bad News Allen. When the WWF bought Stampede Wrestling in 84, Bret made the leap into the global stage that was WWF. So we get into the Hart Foundation. Early in the World Wrestling Federation, Bret was nearly saddled with a cowboy gimmick, but thankfully that didn't stick. Instead, he was able to team with his brother-in-law, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, to form the Hart Foundation.
It's my favorite tag team.
This is big.
I love them. We've done a legacy on the Hart Foundation. Go back in our archives and look at that too. But they're my favorite tag team when I first saw them. I loved them and Jimmy Hart. I thought it was all great. And even when they turned face after that, I loved the Hart Foundation. I don't know what it was about them.
Their story and their turn, and even the story of their gear is fantastic. They wanted something different. And at the same time, I think I can't remember the seamstress of the name, but they were like, all I have left is pink and some black. And they're like, all right, let's make it work.
Do it.
And, I mean, it's interesting. It's the Hart Foundation, so why wouldn't they be pink? I'm just saying.
Just
sounds
the
like
perfect combination of, like a Beauty and the Beast, right? Like a big and small. Like, and just Bret took the workload. Neidhart would get the hot tag. And then just they always made it work. And
it's funny how you said that. He was the tag, and then Neidhart was the hot tag. They say Neidhart was the powerhouse, and that it's exactly what it was, Craig.
And just the way he was raised. Imagine like with 11 siblings, and I think 10 of them were brothers, and he wasn't the youngest. Owen was the baby, but like he still had to be like one of the toughest, and raised by Stu Hart. And you can tell in his movements that led to his entire career. Like even notice when he gets up from being in a prone position, the way he lifts his left knee and then turns, there's no wasted movement with him. So from a technical standpoint, he was the crispest dude ever.
He was, and I think Bret has ultimately lured me to the Hart Foundation. I loved Bret, and even as I was watching them as a tag team, I was like, that'd be really cool if Bret would, fight for the Intercontinental Championship. When you daydreamed as a kid back then, you always kind of like, talked about, wow, that would be a cool Intercontinental Champion. I remember thinking about that Bret often, and I don't think they get enough credit as a tag team. I know that's crazy to say, but like they were heels and then they were faces. So they fought everybody like in the 80s. And the 80s on both, even in the Crockett territory and in WWF, like there was the best time for tag team wrestling. I mean, just the names alone. But they took on the Killer Bees, the Young Stallions, the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers, Demolition, the British Bulldogs.
Rougeaus.
The Rougeaus was a great team.
Conquistadors, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, and they did it both, right? They faced the Rougeau brothers when the Rougeaus came in as faces and Bret and Anvil were heel, and then they also refaced them when they flipped it, when they became the American boys, the Rougeaus, and then Bret and Jim were face. So they feuded with Demolition when the script was flipped, then they refeuded with Demolition when it flipped the other way. Same thing with the Rougeau brothers, same thing with the Young Stallions, same things with the Killer Bees, same things with all, like they were in there with everybody. The British Bulldogs were faces and they were heels, but they never got a chance to do the opposite because Bulldogs were gone at that point. But Bret,
no Orient Express in that mix.
No, the Orient Express was in that mix. The Rockers, the Nasty Boys, like there was everybody. Like they faced everybody as tag teams because they were heels first and then faces. And what a run! Like I mean, from 80, I think they formed the team sometime late 84, maybe 85. I think it's more 85 that they formed the team, and then they were 91 is when they wrestled finally. As the tag team, and then they would rejoin later. Dave's going to get that later in the 90s, but they didn't. They weren't the Hart Foundation.
They were 2-time champions, which sounds crazy because there's some 3-time champions that you would think that Hart Foundation should be in that kind of conversation.
Davis wanting Dynamite to get on the apron. He can't. Jimmy Hart hit him with a megaphone earlier on. What is this?
Here it is. The Hart clothesline. No. Champions of the world.
I can't believe it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the match and new World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, the Hart Foundation.
But Bret broke out in 1991 as a single star, quickly proved he can hang with the best. So that year of 91 at SummerSlam, he faced Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship. The match is an absolute masterpiece. Bret walked out as champion, and fans saw that he was more than just a tag guy.
It's not even their best match either, and I don't mean that as a bad thing, because it was people remember it. As a fan, I remember we were all pleasantly surprised, and it's how you bring... Bret was that it's weird. Before the bottom fell out on Vince, Bret was that underling that Vince was trying to bring up. Vince knew Hogan, Savage, and all them, and the Warrior wasn't really working out at that point. It was getting rocky. They were all getting older, and so Bret was that attempt to bring somebody from, he was fresh, even though we saw him all throughout the 80s as a tag team. When he finally became a singles wrestler and beat Kurt Hennig, like, we were like, oh, like, he's this fresh new talent now that's coming up and, going to prep himself for the future. Davey Boy Smith did something similar, coming from a tag team that was popular in the 80s. He became like a singles staple there. Shawn Michaels did the exact same thing. Michaels did the same thing. Like, he was a tag team in the 80s, and then they breached him out like in the 90s. So Vince was trying, and then he had a lot of other bullshit that happened with the steroid trial and everything else, and that all, and Hogan just kind of collapsing the entire promotion. Go ahead, Craig. Sorry.
Nice block there, that move. Oh, he's got that hole half applied on the canvas. He's turning him over. Beautiful counter. The sharpshooter. He's got it. He's got it. No. We've got a new champion. We got a new champion. No. All right.
The winner of this bout, and
No, I was just going to say, during that the steroid thing was a big issue. Like, he had to have people he trusted. He had to have people, like, that would do business and that he could troll. And all these guys you just mentioned, the Shawn.
And Hulk
Brett,
never wanted to move over for any of them.
Teams.
Hulk would rather the promotion burn than put anybody over in the early 90s.
And it was the first time that you had to take a chance on smaller guys because they were clean. And didn't rely on their bodies, right? So, like Warrior and Hogan and stuff. So it's
say that.
Yeah.
They were clean. They were the cleanest that you could be. And say clean in wrestling.
They were cleanish.
Yeah, they're cleanish.
Because Vince has always been known as a guy who, he doesn't like small guys. He likes
him.
monsters and stuff.
I fucking hate him.
You hadn't seen a guy like Backlund in a while, but it was almost like, and Backlund would go on to like feud with Bret, but it was almost like a first shot of a smaller guy during a down period and during a period where they had to be clean.
You had
it was good timing, and he was an absolute he was a workhorse. Bret was, whatever you gave him did not matter. He did it to the best of his ability. He was the perfect loyal company man for Vince.
Yeah,
he really
and
was.
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that major level of individual holds for Bret, but there was a brief time of his, I would say, mid-card level as an individual. WrestleMania 8 is a prime example of that. I remember this match very, very specifically. Roddy Piper getting the ring bell and not being able to use it. Just things like that with this kind of rivalry with them. And, Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper for the IC title. There's just tension, respect, storytelling.
To your point, Dave, like CM Punk and Cena just did that same spot with the bell,
right?
And belt and like that, and they put it like back to back with Roddy and Bret. And I was like, holy shit! It was like with CM Punk's love of Bret, it was just an homage to Bret, which just goes to show how influential Bret was in this whole thing.
And it's a sleeper. What a wimp! What a wimp! Oh, look at that move off the turnbuckle. He's on. I told you Bret Hart was going to win. History has been made here in the Hoosier Dome. What a move by Bret the Hitman Hart. We got a new Intercontinental Champion.
The winner of this bout, and new Intercontinental Champion, Hitman.
Yeah. No, it always is that 100%. Way, and it's weird. And then this is just such a weird time, like in '92, because the business should have been turning the keys over to the new people, but you kind of had some people at the top, like not so much Savage, but Hogan mainly, and then the Warrior were kind of a big reason as to why Bret wasn't able to shift into fourth gear. Like from that Intercontinental level, because nobody wanted to pass the torch, and then you were in this weird area of the steroid era, and then everybody jockeying for position to not fucking go to jail at times, and then also just to not be.
It was messy.
Their reputations were damaged, and then you had Bret was the only one that was still standing tall, going like, "I'll do it." And then you had Hogan, who was the only one that was still standing tall, going like, "I'll do it." And then you had Bret was the only one that was still standing tall, going like, "I'll do it." And then you had Hogan, who was the only one that was still standing tall, going like, "I'll do it." And Dave, you'll read on here too. We get into Bret 92. Everything changed for him in late 92.
Right. In 92, it's the championship era, right? So he defeats Ric Flair to become the WWF champion for the first time. Gone were the days of muscle bound giants on the juice. This was the age of the technician. Bret was the ultimate technician. His reigns were filled with hard-fought matches. Yokozuna clashing with Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10 in a brother versus brother classic, and going the distance with Shawn Michaels.
And he was never rewarded. Vince's whole machine was build, and then pay off on a big show. And with Bret, it was like, you're going to beat Flair in a house show. And there was a bunch of bullshit with Flair going on, too. He had an inner ear problem. He had, confidence issues. He had all this weird shit going on.
But Vince also told me he wanted him to go. He wanted to go younger. Told him to go.
To this day, I'm like, I don't know how, because Flair ended up wrestling at Survivor Series in November of 92, and then Flair also was in the Royal Rumble in 93. Why you couldn't have just built that goddamn feud and had Bret beat Flair on the Royal Rumble pay-per-view and win the title? I think Bret's reign would have... he still would have lost to Yokozuna. He still would have, because Vince is a sucker for big guys. And then on top of that, Hulk came back. That's what I'm saying. Bret was doomed no matter what. But I think as fans, we would have appreciated more or Survivor Series instead of that dumb tag match going on if Bret beat Flair there. And I think that because Vince had programmed us on the big shows, that's where I crown my guys. But then out of nowhere, he beats Rick on a house show on a foreign tour and of Canada and all that, and then we're supposed to buy it, and we're like, wait a minute, last big show that we saw, he was beat by Davey Boy, because we didn't cover the Davey Boy SummerSlam thing either, where Bret crafted that whole match and put Davey Boy over and showed the locker room and the business that I can make stars. That's super important as well.
At least Flair let him go over. And maybe that was the compromise. I'm not going to do it on TV. I won't do it.
I don't remember who it was, but Bret said someone called him the day before saying, I think Vince is going to put the title on you. And Bret's like, that's not fucking possible. Why would he? I just lost to Davey at SummerSlam in August, and they haven't done anything with my character, really. It's just kind of been whatever.
That's how it works.
Yeah, and he's like, why would they do that? And so it's so fucking weird the way it happened. The backstage story is way more interesting than what we saw on TV, which was we just tuned into Saturday Morning Wrestling Superstars one morning, and they're like, by the way, Bret Hart defeated Ric Flair this past weekend. And we're like, I'm sorry, what? So in a weird way, even though we knew Bret as IC champion for the last year or two, we didn't know him as world champion, and I think it hurt the brand. And I think Vince was trying to do, hey, you need to go to house shows because anything can happen, and I get that, but at the same time, wrestling was falling apart in America because we were tired of the gimmicks and the blah blah blah, and nobody accepted Bret as a good wrestler. Nobody wanted it. Crockett died. You know what I mean? And they lived and died by what we have great wrestlers. We have Harley Race, we have Ric Flair, we have all these people. That's what we do. Fuck the other promotion. We have real wrestlers. And then you try to put Bret in the forefront as that and say, we do too, pal. It's like, no, you don't. You have Giants, and you have Hogans, and you have the Warriors, and you have the Savages, and you have all those people. You have larger-than-life characters. You don't have wrestlers. And Bret was in this weird fucking thing. It's like, what do you say, no? When the boss is going to be like, I'm going to put the title on you? When he thought he was going to get fired on top of it.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to work.
It's crazy.
And we're totally glossing over, the feuds with Diesel, Jerry Lawler, and then even the rising force of what was Stone Cold Steve Austin
even the down period in the 94, 95, the feud with Owen, WrestleMania 10. Jesus Christ. And what they fucked up with WrestleMania 9, they booked
the SummerSlam
Bret,
cage match after that.
They booked Bret perfect for WrestleMania 10. What they fucked up at WrestleMania 9, they had this amazing storyline where they turned Owen. Owen pins Bret clean as a sheet in the opening match, and then Bret ends up beating Yoko in the main event, and then Owen coming out and staring at him was one of the best fucking...
I should be champion.
And that whole thing, we saw a summer tour of Owen and Bret together. We got to see in house shows photos and the cage match, like you said, Craig, and then Vince wanted to go the other way. He saw another big giant, so he had Backlund beat Bret at Survivor Series 94, and Diesel wins. But then Bret ends up beating Diesel at Survivor Series 95 in a fucking great match, because Bret does that. He elevates people and he pushes people, and then you had the Jerry
When's the last
Lawler.
time you said Diesel had a great match, Jess?
Right, yeah. It was with Shawn and Bret, ironically. Those two are the only, as far as good wrestling is concerned, where you're like, man, that was a great Diesel match. That was a great Nash match, And yeah, that was 95, was Bret being unselfish and taking on Jerry Lawler, who was a great heel. Hakushi, Isaac Yankem. Bret ate the bullet on, and there was so much stuff or whatever. And then we get to 96 where he leaves after he loses to Shawn at WrestleMania 12 in the Iron Man match, which is also polarizing because I think it's boring as shit. But a lot of people are like, that's one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time.
Wait a minute. Michael said he got it. He got all of it. Michael's got all of it. Michael with a cover. 5, 2,
You had that where he takes on Shawn Michaels.
It was an hour long. It was fine. It was an hour long.
But they do an hour long.
The audience wasn't ready for it.
You're right. Exactly, Craig. In the climate of the American wrestling audience in 1996, we were not accustomed to that kind of wrestling. So I'm not discounting Shawn and Bret at all. But at the same time, that was hard to swallow in 96, but the tides were changing. You had WCW doing their stuff or whatever. Bret leaves for a while.
Oh, and you end with no falls and going to overtime in the 60-minute Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all that. Why? Why do we got to go overtime?
That's literally what Bret said, Dave. As Bret rolls outside the ring, I'll never forget.
He literally says, why?
Yeah, he's a why. It's just, what the fuck? So we have that.
I love it.
He goes away to take a break finally for 6 months, 8 months, or whatever it was. And then when he comes back, he's like, Vince's like, who do you want to work with? He was like, that guy. And he points to Steve Austin. He was like, that fucking guy. That's who I want to work with.
Yep.
Who had
That's the guy.
shed the ringmaster, who was trying to get this Stone Cold gimmick over and everything. And it fate intertwined with these guys. And And
by the way, people forget Austin was quite technical as well for quite a time.
And he wasn't dropped on his head yet here. And so the matches that Austin had with Shawn Michaels and Bret are just things that should be studied and watched.
Chef's kiss.
It takes a while, right? When something's going bad, even though you stumble upon something good, it takes a while to rise up. And we look back on the late 96, early 97 shit, and we realize it was getting good. WCW was just beating the shit out of WWF at that point with the NWO. Right. And then you get Austin. You get the Survivor Series 96 match. You get the WrestleMania 13 match. And what do you say about the WrestleMania 13 match? What do you say? Still to this day, one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever, one of the best, and one of the most...
What a double turn.
Yeah,
one of the few 5-stars Meltzer ever puts out there for
But one of the
WWE.
most definitive wrestling matches in WWF history. It was so important, and nobody knew it at the time, but it was so important that match did everything that it did.
Austin has not given up. I can't understand. If you do not understand, we'll stop the fight. Ken Shamrock stopping it right now. That's it. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin has it out. Austin is unconscious. Austin never gave up. But he passed out with the pain. Austin is out. And Bret, the Hitman Hart, has defeated one of the gutsiest individuals ever in the World Wrestling Federation. I can tell you, I've never seen a display of intestinal fortitude like we saw.
It mattered to Stone Cold's career. It mattered to Bret's career, which Bret would go on for the rest of 97 and do this innovative, amazing gimmick of being heel here in America and being face in other countries. Nobody'd ever done that before. And I know, Dave, I'm stepping all over your notes, but you're good. The 97 Bret Hart is...
In spite of all that, right, Jess? We still have the ultimate story. We have the Montreal Screwjob. We can't not talk about it.
I can't even not talk about Bret's 97. That Hart Foundation heel faction, Bret's promos The critique about Bret going into that year was his promos were the weakest, because he was good at everything else except for promos. But dude, Bret's promos in 1997, and when he reconciled with Owen and Davey, and the way he hugged both of them, and that scowl that he had, like one of the best television moments I've ever seen. Him pushing Bret down or Vince down. We'd never seen Vince take like physical attack
this
before.
Is bullshit.
Yeah, and he said bullshit like on USA, and it just he was so fucking ahead of his time. And even though he really hated the direction of American wrestling, he did not like it as a person. He chose to put that into his character. And the Hart Foundation faction with Brian Pillman, Jim Neidhart, Owen, Davey, dude was so fucking genius. And by the way, Vince didn't even care. Vince loved Shawn. And Vince wanted to push Shawn. He wanted to push DX. He wanted to push, and we got all this. It's crazy what 97 was. Bret was a fucking genius.
There's a little bit more to that too, because Vince really hitched his wagon to Bret and put him in. I want to say some ridiculous 50-year contract.
Yes, it was a 20-year contract that he couldn't fucking pay.
It's just, and he couldn't pay him, and he's like, I got to let you go. I'll help you negotiate with WCW. So all this is happening.
But all that Dave, all that meant is I choose Shawn over you. There's no reason.
Yeah.
Because Bret, even in his documentary, said, I asked him, I'll take less money. I want to stay. And Vince no, go. Vince thought that Bret was the cancer, not Shawn. It was fucking crazy. It's crazy.
And even back then, $1 million a year for 20 years is not a lot of fucking money.
Not for what Vince did.
Seen that coming. No.
And business was already going up at the end of 97, by the way. Austin was already established. After Owen dropped Austin on his head, Austin was red hot. Right. He was red hot. The Rock was starting to become a major heel at the end of 97. Ken Shamrock was doing really well, feuding with The Rock. There was a lot. DX was kind of on this cusp of trying to figure out.
There were a lot of irons in the fire.
All he had to do was keep Bret in his top 5, and he couldn't.
And he couldn't do it. He wanted Bret to go. He thought Bret was the problem.
It gets really fucking weird because we talk about the screw job. So Bret's the champion in November of 97. But we all know he's on his way out to WCW. He doesn't want to lose in his hometown. Mid-match, Michaels had Bret in a sharpshooter. Vince ordered the ref to ring the bell, even though Bret never tapped. Shock and chaos, spit. The spit in the face of Vince is epic. I don't know how you aim spit. After a 20-minute
Bret
match.
always did that so well. Bret always spit his loogies.
Big old glob.
Perfect.
It was always the dehydrated glob of spit too.
It's he practiced it, Yeah. So he punched Vince in the face so hard in the back that he knocked him.
And then he
fucking
worded
cold.
WCW and broke some monitors and shit.
Yeah.
What happened?
I've got the move that really move 'em. I said,
What happened? Bret Hart gave up in a sharpshooter.
Just a sexy boy. I'm not your toy. Just a sexy boy.
Fantastic. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to get out. And if you're still here, I'm going to knock you the fuck out. And then he did. He took a shower. And Vince waited for him and gave him a free shot, and Bret knocked him the fuck out.
I never understood why he allowed the documentary crew back then. Vince did.
God, it's fantastic television, is it not?
It's perfect.
Yeah.
So, and what's fantastic about this whole thing, to Jess's point, is that Bret was never the cancer. Bret was honestly the cure to everything. But I'd argue that Shawn had the ear of Vince this whole time.
He might have been difficult, but we don't know. But yes,
they were all difficult. They were all difficult.
Yeah, you're right.
I'd rather deal with a difficult Bret that wants to talk about the art of wrestling than Shawn, who just came and fucking fucked up all the time and being pissed and paranoid. And Bret was paranoid too.
And you have Shawn and Razor and Hunter and God knows who
Bret
else
was paranoid too, to be fair. But it's because
it's a bad mix, and on top of that, they're not making the revenue that they're used to, and everyone's.
Can you imagine
if it's a toxic environment
in 96, 97? Can you imagine if Bret and Shawn were on the same page and they can you imagine?
Yeah,
and then Austin gets in the mix, and it's crazy.
Yeah. So Bret debuted in WCW shortly after the screw job, but it just never clicked the way we all thought it would. bad booking, creative confusion, lack of vision. It plagued his run all in. He did win the WCW World title, the U.S. title, and even a tag goal, but none of it felt like that WWF magic because, quite frankly, the NWO had a stranglehold on the whole thing. And when they were supposed to end the NWO, I'm totally...
They kept trying to restart it.
Here. They kept trying to restart it instead of fucking finally getting someone over and killing the faction. That's how it works. But they quite frankly were so enamored with it, with their great idea, which wasn't their idea. They copied it from someone in Japan. They couldn't fucking let it go. And then came disaster. In 1999, during a match with Bill Goldberg.
Well, not even that. Before that, like Bret started having hamstring problems, and then so he was on and off from that. And then the biggest bone they threw Bret was the U.S. title in '98, and then Owen died. In May of '99.
Yeah, he wasn't even there.
Then he went off for a while after that, and then he came back, and then we had the spot with Goldberg where he wore the plate on his chest or whatever, and did that, which we covered in the Goldberg Legacy of Goldberg episode, and then yeah, like they Russo of all people, when he came over, said we need to put the title on Bret. Like, I mean, Vince Russo always liked Bret, and so he was just, of all people, Russo's like, God damn it, put the title on the guy you're giving a fuckload of money to. Like,
that was the whole point.
It might be the only smartest thing Russo ever did. That and the end of Survivor Series '98, where The Rock swerved everybody. But other than that, like, yeah, those are two things. So Bret's in there, and then he gets put against Goldberg. They're two biggest stars, Bret and Goldberg in '99, and Goldberg fucking kicked him. Did the same spot that he always did. Bret hit the ropes weird or whatever. Bret says to this day, I didn't know the kick was coming. I'm like, listen, in all fairness, I'm not going to question Bret Hart when it comes to pro wrestling because that would be really dumb of me. But Goldberg did that kick all the time. And Bret put his hand up. Everything was perfect. But Goldberg kicked him so hard that he kicked Bret's own hand into Bret's head, and Bret's head jerked back. Bret said that he had a quarter-size hole in the muscle in his neck after he got kicked that hard. Like, it just fucked him up really bad. He got a concussion. He finished the match, and he wrestled for another month, including a hardcore match with Terry Funk where he got hit in the head with chairs and everything like that. And then finally he got pulled off the road because he couldn't even have his blinds open in his hotel rooms because his headache was so splitting, and he vomited all the time or whatever. I mean, he had a concussion, a major concussion after Goldberg. I know he blames Goldberg to this day, but really what fucked Bret up was that kick, but the fact that they didn't take him off the road. He wrestled for a month after that shit. Like,
I didn't even know that.
In hardcore matches against Terry fucking Funk, who will hit you in the head, by the way.
Doesn't care. Yeah,
yep, and then what ended up happening later was months and months later when he was trying to recover from it, he was riding his 10-speed, and a car got too close for him, and he went off the side of the road and hit a pothole and fell and hit his head again, and that's when he had a stroke. I'm not saying that it didn't start at the Starrcade, but it's a guy who got concussion after concussion after concussion.
The amount of like just ridiculous bad runs. It's like a bad run of cards, but with your health and your safety. Bret Hart ran into after the screw job. It's just
as safe
he took care of his body.
As safe as he was in the WWF,
never hurt anyone.
As safe as it was in the WWF, he gets to WCW and he just starts fucking getting injured, and you're getting older at that point too. To be fair,
and you know
what?
It wasn't safe in the '80s till the early '90s. Really, like those bumps that he took in the ring that they took him on. It wasn't until Vince started taking bumps in the ring he realized how hard that ring was. Like he was a workhorse, and his body kind of caught up with him. Like
his body was getting calloused in the wrong way. Like how many stingers did Bret get? You know what I mean? Like a lot, probably a lot. Like
if you're counting here, that's 2 career-ending injuries, a stroke, and cancer.
Yeah,
but he still kind of stands tough. He's kind of that guy.
He's one of the toughest dudes in the history.
It's why I don't care that he's that bitter, because I'm like, you know 100%. What? I think about everything, and I'm like, go ahead, Bret. Say whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Like he lived it. He was a good. How are you going to ever dispute one of the greatest in-ring wrestlers of all time? Like, how are you ever going to tell him no?
You just can't.
Like, yeah, you can't.
I mean, and even on top of that, even though he's bitter to this day, in my opinion, he did return to WWE in 2010. He patched things up with Shawn and Vince, and he wrestled a final match at WrestleMania 26, right?
Against Vince, yeah.
He was in...
Finally, the Hitman going for the signature submission hold brings an end to one of the most volatile rivalries in WWE history.
He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006 and then again in 2019 as part of the Hart Foundation. What's missing here too is now his legendary match with Stone Cold is also inducted into the Hall of Fame, so he's kind of technically
three-time Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. Bret wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but he was real. He made you believe in what he was doing, and his matches told stories. He can make you cheer, make you boo. Make you feel. He can make you cheer and boo on different
different continents at the same time.
Right. He made you feel like the outcome actually mattered. Wrestlers like Kurt Angle, CM Punk, FTR, Chris Benoit cite him as a major influence.
Yeah. Even KO, right? Like KO, I mean, he's a wrestler's wrestler, where people who know love the shit out of him and want to.
I think Jericho brings it up too, right, Craig? I mean, Jericho talks about it. I know that we're citing a lot of Canadians helping out Canadians, but still.
Well, he's I know we make it a joke or whatever, but he legitimately is a Canadian hero. All Canadian wrestlers love him.
100%.
Christian loves him. Everybody 100%. Loves him.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into those championships and accomplishments. He's a 5-time WWF Heavyweight Champion, by the way. 2-time Intercontinental Champion. 2-time Tag Team Champion. You would think that'd be more. He's a 4-time WCW US Champion. WCW Tag Team Champion with Goldberg, which is
of all people, Goldberg.
That's hilarious.
Of all people. 2-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion. And a final thought here. A lot of people think Bret Hart should be in your top 5, Mount Rushmore. I think a lot of people would have a hard time with that. I'm not so sure that I would keep him out of my top 5. I really don't. I argue that the reason why people would keep him out of the top 5 is because of the negativity.
I honestly, Dave, I think it's
the unfortunate luck.
It gets crowded too, and it's the short-sightedness. I think that if you look at it from somebody who was a part of the collapsing early '90s wrestling, and they were one of the pillars.
And the lack of revenue draw, right?
It's easy to put the Hulks, the Austins, the Rocks, because they have the big dollar signs on them, because they were on top during the major, and they were contributors, by the way. Hulk was a contributor of the wrestling hitting the boom era. Him and Vince did it together. Austin and Vince did it together in the rest. The Rock was this anomaly that came along, and so it's easy to look at the dollar signs of those and be like, well, those are 3 easily of my top 5, and then who else do I like after that? It depends on when you came up as a wrestling fan, who you name. Some people might name Cena.
How long you watch wrestling? You put
some people choose Michaels over Bret. And
that could be crazy.
He's a dude that said it wasn't the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, and then you didn't towards the end you didn't deny it. He wasn't that guy's full of shit. He said it before CM Punk said best in the world.
Yeah.
So
he made everyone better, right?
Yes, that's probably the best thing to sum him up, is that he understood the give and take. He understood, okay, how am I going to get myself over, but how am I going to make this person that I'm taking on, make them be worthy of giving me a good match or whatever. From the Hakushis to the Diesels,
he would carry it all the ways. He carried Davey Boy apparently through a drunken stupor.
Shut up.
But Bret is
those are Bret's words.
Bret is great.
No, they're probably true, Dave. They are probably 100%.
Bret is great, and I'm glad that we finally did this, and there's a lot of things we're leaving out. We can't cover everything because his career was so long.
It's impossible.
Even though his career was cut short, can you imagine if he didn't get kicked in the head and he was able to leave WCW when it went out of business in 2021 and he came back?
Bro, who knows?
He's in there with the Eddie Guerreros, the Kurt Angles, the Chris Benoits, which he did fight Chris Benoit in WCW, by the way. He it's there's so many people that he could have came back to.
He just understood the business over anybody in that era at the time, and he still took a bad bounce to go to WCW and get kicked in the head, which sucks. And I think, Jess, you're right. Nothing malicious. It's just unfortunate.
And real quick before we end it,
the
too,
ring, the ring's what 2 feet smaller.
We yada past the
head,
1998 WCW, and there are gems. We've watched Booker T against Bret Hart, Sting against Bret
good
Hart.
stuff.
Sting against Bret Hart, they were a little bit of a letdown, but the fact that you get to see them touch is awesome. He did even face Hulk Hogan in a couple Nitros, and there was a lot of things that he got to do in there that, it didn't really add to the Bret legacy or whatever, but I mean, if you want to go watch gems, Chris Benoit he took on, like I said, Booker T. He was in there against people, Luger, like he was in there against people that you never had seen Bret interact with before. I mean, I guess he did interact with Luger a little bit.
It doesn't even sound right. None of that.
Yeah,
sounds
so
right.
and Flair, he had more matches with Flair at the beginning of '98 when he first came in. So like there is things that he got a chance to do in there. Piper, Savage. Like, he got to face Savage,
right?
Like, which we didn't get a healthy Savage and Bret in WWF. So it's like, it's kind of Bret. So if you do, it's a weird thing to go back, and I'm not saying you're going to see 5-star matches, but to see him kind of touch Macho and Piper and Flair again.
Macho was on the announce table trying to get small again while Bret was coming up, out of the steroid era. They barely touched.
So there's a lot. There's a ton of shit that you can go back and watch with Bret. I mean, one of the greatest of all time. He just is. It's time to say it.
There it is. I love it. For audio fans, give us a listen Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, or watch our videos on YouTube at our channel. There's other places you can look. Look to the left. And then give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2018. For Craig, Justin, and myself, this is the O.W.P signing off. Have a good one.